not going to be in a good mood. Try to do my best. Alrighty.
We have launched.
Welcome, everybody. We are live and alive. We're doing Planet Green Trees. And as it goes, we'll do about 2 hours of talk. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be. Maybe we'll go over this list here. I'm Michael Komorn, your host. And as I like to do at the beginning of the show, let me introduce the group of entertainers that are joining me tonight. In the corner, we've got, in the yellow corner wearing blue trunks, we've got Tommy Two-Tone, who's running the board over there. Welcome, Tommy.
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Looking forward to the show.
We have the one and only Jim Powers, who is engulfed in candy right now, but I'm sure he can break away for a second to say hello. Jim, welcome to the show.
Good evening, Michael. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. Got an action-packed show. I don't believe Michael has told everybody the show number and the
Yeah, today's show number.
title.
Well, we'll get to, I don't know. Okay, I'll go circle back.
All right.
But thanks for, well, go ahead. What's the show number?
It's
No, it's a show
number
number.
438.
438. And what are we calling it, Jim? In protest?
Smokin' Buttholes.
And you came up with that name. Let's just be clear.
I-
All right, fine.
It was a group, and
It was a group
it was
thing.
a very democratic process.
We voted, and that's what we decided on. That's
It doesn't feel
democracy.
complete.
And I leave it at that. It's not, there's no protest.
It doesn't feel complete.
It doesn't feel complete.
Oh yeah.
There was a tail on
Fuck
it, too.
Bill Shooter.
Yes.
All
No.
right, okay.
Thank you.
So, and around the corner,
Resolution.
our, we're lucky to have her here tonight. She plays in like 9 other bands. And we're lucky to get her to come sit in with us tonight. Please welcome Debra Young.
Glad to be here. And really, I'm only in one band.
All right.
It's
She
just one.
prioritizes coming here because she loves coming here.
Exactly.
I know.
Yeah.
I like to kibitz.
A little sarcastic.
Speaking of kibitzing, we're very happy to have the one and only Jamie Lowell. Jamie Lowell's here tonight.
Yes, we are.
He is, of course, Jamie Lowell, and he's responsible for everything. And as it goes, because it's Jamie Lowell and he's responsible for everything, whatever topics we may have planned, despite Tommy's diligence and organization far beyond what has ever been done before, Jamie Lowell gets to dictate the topics.
I have a slot. Well, you detect the order, I guess, at some point. Maybe that's the audible that you call, but Tommy has a slot available. Right now, it's
There's an
topic
open
4.
mic slot, correct?
It's
Number
called
4,
the Jamie
so-
Audible. We're going to be topicking off of Jamie, I guess. But
Yeah,
welcome.
Well, I have a topic that's very good.
Audible.
And fits right into this great show already put together by Tommy.
Excellent. Thanks for being here tonight.
My pleasure. I love being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's show number 438. It's October 23rd. Smokin' Buttholes. The topics that we're going to talk about is something about an
He gave in.
Oklahoma lawyer pleads guilty to staging threats from irate cannabis proponents. That's kind of an interesting story. Traffic tickets shouldn't lead to debt or jail. Here's how to fix the system. How Bear works in Michigan. And recommendations for reform. And, of course, the Jamie Lowell number 4 topic.
Mystery topic.
The mystery topic. And before we get into these, let's start with the Jamie Lowell. As we said, we're just going to audible it to
number 4 is number 1.
We're switching it
Jamie
up.
Lowell.
There we
Well,
go.
there's a rant scheduled for me, and I may do that at any given time when I feel like
Yeah,
jumping
you
in.
could just burst
You might
out.
just
so you
say that's
better
not
get it in.
interesting enough and just burst into the rant at any time.
Exactly.
Tommy, you're comfortable with the switch up? Okay. Thumbs up over there.
It's good.
So,
Well, those we usually tease the topics. Then I rant, and then we do 1 and 2. But
But
we
we're
are
switching up.
right. We're switching up. Exactly. We're moving
straight
topic
want me to
4
throw
to
out a teaser or just want me to get right at it?
No, get rid of it.
Okay. A little foreplay, or you want me to just gallop right toward it?
Come right in with whatever you got. I'll be in a defensive position. Go ahead.
All right, so your lawsuit and the proposed legislation that would deschedule cannabis because it's inconsistent with existing laws have a little conflict in some people's minds with how to deal with the fact that you're peeling away all the existing consequences in the criminal code when you do that, and the only things that are outlined are the things that are in the MRTMA that specify what the consequences are for certain behavior with amounts of cannabis and stuff like that. So, I mean, one thing obviously is there could be legislation that is done along with that move after the after you would win, you and Cannabis Council, Komorn Law and Cannabis Council may win the suit against the Board of Pharmacy potentially, or if the legislation were to pass. So the consequences of that actually happening and how to fix whatever those consequences may be. And what can the discussion be to those bureaucrats that are scared about doing it because of this?
All right, so you're asking about the lawsuit that we filed with Cannabis Council on behalf of John Sinclair and other patients against the Pharmacy Board, seeking that they unschedule marijuana, remove it from the controlled substance list. You also brought up that there's some legislation pending that is being tossed around and hasn't got anywhere. I mean,
No, but then that's part of why, because the Legislative Services Bureau is saying that this would have too much of an impact on the existing laws, and
Right.
we can't just do this.
Talk louder? Oh, okay. So,
And I just want to point out one other thing too. It seems to me, or it's my understanding that in other states, when there's a change of law in one area and it affects other places, it's automatic that those areas are subsequently
well,
changed along with it.
okay, so, and I'm glad you brought it up, though. It's a good question. It also puts on the table what the concept is of any opposition to this being successful. And when you talk about the legislature taking some action, which is a solution that much easier than what we're asking for, and most courts could certainly punt to kick it down the field and say this is a legislative solution, not one for us, even though we have the legal grounds to get the remedy that we're asking for. But you brought up, the impact of this from the Legislative Bureau is that it takes away all of the penalties associated with cannabis. Well, of course. I mean, meaning there are still, after legalization, several issues that remain regarding the punishment of cannabis. And those punishments, their existence within our fabric, both administratively and within the public health code, is because it's a Schedule 1. So if the complaint by the legislature is, if we unschedule it, it's going to eliminate all these other crimes, is that a bad thing? I mean, their concern is exactly what the nature and purpose of what we're talking about taking place. As you said, in other states, things should line up, or they have lined up, or there's some case or legislative, act on top of the passing or legalizing that synchronizes all of it. I mean, it's an absurdity that it still remains Schedule 1, and that because it's Schedule 1 in these different arenas, people are still subject to penalties. And it's recreational, and the legislature adopted it as a recreational drug. And it's at Schedule 1. How could this be? Is there another controlled substance that somebody can go and order up for the weekend off the, pharmacy and get it and go back and any couple Xanax? My mother-in-law's coming to, or whatever, whatever the
Well,
thing would.
I could play the devil's advocate and just say that maybe the Legislative Services Bureau thought that the offered legislation was incomplete. And here's an example. By some arguments, marijuana is already Schedule 2 in the state of Michigan. But let's say that...
For people with cards.
Right. But let's say that they
It's so stupid, though, so contradictory the way it's...
For sure. But let's say they reschedule it and they make it...
Unschedule it.
Well, yeah. That's
First of all, do you understand...
That one's tough. That one is tougher
But
to
here,
to
you need
respond
to understand something.
Yeah.
When you talk about a controlled substance,
Yeah.
it is at a pharmacy
Yep.
that you get it. It is distributed by certain amounts that are purportedly backed up by DEA studies, exact amounts, side effects, etc. And the people that are doing it have medical licenses or have been through some kind of training.
Yeah.
When the threshold to get this is how much capital you have, liquid capital and or investments and what your bank accounts look like and not having a felony, it has nothing to do with medical. This is not it's a regulatory system. It's not a controlled system.
No, it's not.
Okay, so I understand that at one point it was.
Well,
and even though it is Schedule 1, it's punished for possession as if it's a Schedule 4 or Schedule
Right.
3. Unfortunately, and it's the only way that it remained, not that it wasn't ruled unconstitutional, because the penalties were
so
so
less,
less.
so much less,
But
yeah.
but with that being said, the existing laws for driving treat it like a Schedule 1, okay? For professional licenses,
Has that been your experience so far?
yes. What
that
do you
they
mean?
treat it as Schedule 1?
Yeah. If a person is in an auto accident causing death,
Yes.
they do not distinguish. And if there's marijuana in your system, this is a accident causing death with a Schedule 1 in your system.
Yeah.
The penalty for that compared to Schedule 3 or Schedule 4 is significant.
Well, no, understood, but it's my understanding, and I might just be disillusioned, but that the people that are getting pulled over for OWID and getting charged, that they're beating it in court, especially when there was no bad driving.
First of all, Jesse Williams and Eric Van Dusen will tell you a story. They had a client up there, was driving, was icy, ran into the back of a car. Her mother died in the car. They got Schedule 1 nanogram.
Wow.
They charged her with Schedule 1 causing death of her mother.
Yeah.
Looking at 15 years.
Yeah.
This is not like a 4-year felony.
Did it
You simply-
stick?
She pled guilty to this.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yes, it is. Now, I will say this, if you want to talk about beating it, I mean, you may have, first of all, beating it and saying that everybody beats it is such a falsity. Not that you have all the data. You know, you see people celebrating something here or there and they've successfully, but the rest of the world, in these courts where it exists and the grind goes on, the percentages are that people are pleading guilty over and over and over again. Okay.
Well, they're pleading guilty because they don't know any better.
Okay, but that's the majority of the people. The
But it's
percent-
still happening.
Yeah,
No, that I believe.
97%.
For sure.
They are all beatable cases.
Right.
Even more so because of the government's own position that.
But how does that happen? These people are entitled to legal representation. Why are their attorneys advising them to plead guilty to these crimes that never happened?
Well, this is how it goes. I think we've been living in an era that it was in our criminal justice system is not. It's broken. It's not set up how it's supposed to be. The principle is that you would overcharge someone in a criminal case just because you can, and then get them to plead to the crime that they really committed is the pattern. If they can charge you with a gun crime, they're going to. They may not think they're ever going to get a conviction for it, but they know they can do it and leverage and later on work out a plea agreement. And this is the problem. If you charge them with the crime, and this way it was supposed to be, you have probable cause issued by a, prosecutor finds that there's grounds to issue a charge or charges, and they go and get it sworn out, and they either plead guilty or go to trial. It's not we're issuing charges so we can negotiate you into a plea of the crime that we think you did. And that's where we're at. And only because of that do we have such high levels of percentages of pleas. The system on top of that is built and become built to move these volumes at this pace. They didn't put money into more effective jury selection or jury pools and making sure people are there and more courtrooms and more judge. They are grinding out pleas and entries into computers and getting money and circulating this. This is the broken system. We've got, and they created a district court. What's the purpose of a district court? They don't need those. One court of justice. It's a method to raise money for the local community. It's so far beyond as just an example. Now, why is that it goes that way? That's part of it, 97% of the people. And because the system is built on resolving cases, like a good plea is a way to get out of a case, work out a deal. You know what I mean? And in order to go to trial, it's a lot of effort. There's a lot of, and it takes time, and it's formalized and sequestering the jury. I thrive on it. Other lawyers enjoy it. But if your practice is, I'm not excusing the people, I'm not excusing the group of lawyers, but I don't know. It's, and in their mind, what looks like a good plea versus going to trial. And, I mean, the other side of which is kind of interesting, some of these issues have become so perverse in our culture. I talk about this in terms of, I don't say government propaganda, but, what does 0.15 mean? If you see that in a breathalyzer test, okay? That person's really drunk. That used to be the legal limit in Michigan at one point, okay? 0.10 also. Now it's 0.08. And most people will hear that number and think they're really drunk, but they have no idea what went into that, and they have no idea what that really means. The machine, the paper, and that's not even that's different. The tests that they give, the methods by which they give them, people have just been sold on the idea that this is a valid way, and we want to trust the police to make these decisions. But as it turns out, they're not reflective of true impairment.
So my question's so cool that it spawns really interesting discussions such as this. I want to trace it back just a little bit, though, to the original point, and I guess two things. Like, what's the pitch to the Legislative Services Bureau as far as the fix in this goes? And could there be a set of circumstances that takes place in which somebody challenges this and says, I'm getting nailed for this felony, and it's because it's in the criminal code because of the scheduling, and it shouldn't be there because we've changed the laws in other places of the law?
Well, I want to answer that question, but one of the things that's important in answering the question is to recognize the multitude of places that interacting with cannabis still has the impact that it does, right? Jobs, for example. I mean, people can fire you, they're not firing people for having alcohol in their system. Alcohol is a regulated, non-controlled substance. At one point, it was illegal. I'm saying that this is a major problem. The entire, I have a this is just, I mean, that this goes on, especially under our current authority and governance that we're, a nurse is accused of having a drug problem, just random, unknown from where it comes from. Later learned it's not anything to do with a patient that she saw, but a scorned family member who's just angry at her. So as a matter of course, similar to other professional licensing, when a complaint comes in, the agency investigates, etc., makes a decision if they want. So they send her to get evaluated, and and she shows up and she self-reports that she's a medical marijuana patient, doesn't have any in her system, and she also takes like a Norco by her doctor, both prescribed or recommended by the same doctor that got a license from Lara, who's now investigating her and sending her to someone to determine. And they conclude, this third-party agency, that she's got a substance abuse problem from her self-reporting of cannabis, and say she's got cannabis use disorder.
Oh,
okay,
that sounds serious.
Yes,
I think I have that.
And they say
at least I've had it, at
psychosis?
least.
and now
That was
you
the
understand at this
psychosis
point
that
of
Barnes was
following
talking about.
along to try to maintain her license. We have not seen her complaint that said that she did something wrong, but now they've gotten into her bloodstream. So I know I'm off track here, but the absurdity of this is only because it's seen as a Schedule 1. The answer to the Legislative Bureau is, do you think that the existing law should be inconsistent with the principles that are articulated within there? And why shouldn't we be doing something to synchronize it?
I've taken it at least that far, and I still.
All right, so what are the other arguments? I mean, it goes to the interpretation of the act, right, of MRTMA. Is it intended to legalize marijuana? Is that a debate? Is it intended to be read broadly for the purposes of the interpretation? It's intended to legalize marijuana for adults over the age of 21. I mean, if those are these are the two proclamations within in MRTMA, the recreational, then from there flows the evidence. Where are the hurdles? I mean, what is the resistance? So you got to be more specific, I guess, in terms of all these other laws exist that penalize citizens because cannabis is scheduled, right? I mean, if it's recreational,
So then, if all the penalties for cannabis were lifted, and the only ones that remained were the consequences spelled out for certain things, certain exceeding limitations of things in MRTMA, then there would be no consequence for.
No. The agency, as the nursing example, if there was some identifiable fact that her use of marijuana adds she's a patient, by the way, but if, let's say we're talking recreational, that her recreational use of marijuana somehow effectuated her job performance, then that is a legitimate basis if that exists, for somebody to force someone into some kind of treatment or make them, whatever, deal with it. Like alcohol, right? That's the intention. If the law is named, let's treat tax marijuana like alcohol as a principle, then nurses are allowed to drink, doctors are allowed to drink, lawyers are allowed to drink. The reporting that they saw them drinking is not by itself going to have them lose their license. It's going to be the depth of that issue, if it exists at all, right? Mm-hmm. Does that help at all? Probably not. It's not the full answer.
Well, no consequence for having 10 pounds. Civil infraction for having more than 2.5 ounces. There'd be a weird void.
Okay, you're talking
in the
about
law.
now. You're talking about the things within MRTMA that are not.
Right, there's lots of things that aren't covered, and those now would have their penalties lifted by way of descheduling. Right?
Okay.
So then how does that
Well,
get-
the question becomes really back to the drafters, in that under what circumstances did they intend for this law to remain felonious, remain punishable by jail or imprisonment? I mean, was that ever the intention?
I'm not going to answer that.
It's kind of hard. What do you mean? Why
Well,
can
there
you
was
not-
discussion about it. It just falls back to after you exceed all these things that are prescribed here, that it falls back to the criminal code. I mean, there was those kind of discussions taking place.
Is the language that I'm talking about? I mean, look, obviously, if you remove marijuana from the public health code, we're not talking about any of this, right? That didn't take place. So the efforts here to allow for, so you're saying there was to legalize certain limited amounts of marijuana for certain people and certain behavior, and therefore, I mean, look, if there are articulated,
there are those limitations that are.
but none of
outlined in
none of them say it should be a felony. None of them direct you to that. So for many of the penalties, for many of the circumstances, they articulate what the penalty is going to be and how and when it could be punished as such. None of them suggest that felonies are in play. None of them suggest a default back to that. If there's anything, if there's a void, the question becomes, what is the answer under MRTMA? MRTMA is a law that if it conflicts with another law, MRTMA prevails. If there's a interpretation to be had with MRTMA and you're questioning whether it should be broad or limited, the law says it should be broadly interpreted with the sole purpose of legalizing for adults the recreational use over the age of 21 and to regulate state system for the sale and businesses, etc. So if that is taken in its full, maybe there's some kind of administrative violation. Maybe it's some kind of penalty that comes up in terms of financial, but if the proclamation is based on a principle that it's going to be legal for adults and doesn't proclaim except in these instances when it's going to be felonized, I don't know how we get there. I don't know how we just automatically fall out of it. This is a solid argument that was taken on by the Michigan Court of Appeals in the Redden case, that despite it being not good law and certain aspects of it being resonating in other opinions, the one that is the most devastating to the medical cannabis community was the MMA did not legalize marijuana. It merely created an exemption for a small group of people if they were in strict compliance with Section 4, strict compliance defined by the police. So that is the same argument that's being made here. So if you put it in the context of what we're really talking about, and the MMA did not legalize marijuana, create a small class, well, the recreational law legalized marijuana. It says it right there. Tended to legalize and tend to create a regulated system. It doesn't say, for X amount of behavior and the rest will be felony. You see what I'm saying? And for those things that are within here that are identified, if there was a flow to it, if you were to say, well, maybe there's some other extended penalty, like a logical equation that could be placed on these other activities based upon, but it certainly would not come to. You know what else is interesting? They came up with this other kind of penalty, which is a non-punishable, non-jailable misdemeanor, which to me is like a civil infraction.
Not really.
Well, if it's the difference between a civil infraction and a misdemeanor is that misdemeanors are punishable by jail.
Well, 1 year criminal.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm saying there's nothing in Michigan law that there's no like code that one could find for this kind of action. In other words, even I think the common law, but under no statute do you see misdemeanor not punishable by some kind of jail. Misdemeanor is either at the very least it's going to be 6 months. I think that's the lowest. Maybe there's some 3-month misdemeanors. Yeah, there's obviously 93-day code stuff, but nothing below. Maybe there's some 90 days. 90 days are the old, some common law like.
Other states do this.
30
okay,
days.
but we're in
the
Michigan. We're in Michigan, and I'm saying there's nothing. There's
That's
no
what they
misdemeanor
give you.
that exists that's less than 90 days. It's okay, so this idea that there's a non-punishable misdemeanor is like a newly created
Yeah, it's fun.
place to find this behavior. The question is, what impact does it have? It doesn't have driving sanctions. That's
Well-
not part of it.
Are you sure?
That particular misdemeanor, because the misdemeanor offenses that have driving sanctions for marijuana are in the public health code.
That's true.
Okay, so if you're finding a punishment within MRTMA that is what's going to cover this behavior that's outside of it, then certainly the direction to the public health code for convictions and public health code violations would not apply here. You see what I'm saying? It's got to be. In fact, that's something. I mean, do we want people to lose their license for these kind of interactions?
So-
like a civil infraction now for marijuana, if that happens, doesn't.
At some point, is the conflict line up where there's a question in law that could be challenged, that people are unduly convicted of something because it remained on the code and it shouldn't have because we changed the law otherwise?
Well, listen.
Is that a case that could? I mean, I know
For
you
sure
have
there
you have a proactive kind of lawsuit, but could somebody use it to like, now I'm hurt, I want to defend myself by saying that?
Well,
shouldn't
listen. That's right. If the circumstance. Well, here you go. I mean, we did get a call, and I was surprised because these calls should not be happening. It's not a priority. It's a declaration by the voters that this should not be a police priority, something they're putting their time and energy to. But some guy got raided. Someone called something. He's growing his plants outside, and under the adult recreationals claimed that they were visible next door or whatever, and took their stuff, went to their house, took their marijuana, and. Are they going to get charged? Are they not going to get charged? Should they get charged? Can they get charged? These are all good questions. And I wonder, I'd like to think that these days are over, right? And the legal issue we raised, every single case we have currently right now, pending from, medical marijuana to now, we file a motion regarding the Johnson Clare that, it applies retroactively, can't, it's not scheduled anymore. It's conflicts with reason and logic. It's, capricious. It's, violates equal protection. All kinds of, basics that just cannot be reconciled and operated within the same legal scheme. Just totally don't make sense. And, all the driving stuff that's coming out likewise. So, yes, Jamie, it would have an impact in those kind of cases.
CPS stuff too, still.
I mean, the CPS is another issue because I think it doesn't matter if it's Schedule 1. It doesn't matter if it's legal. They don't care. It's because the religion most of the time is impact. I mean, the state manual.
Or if they just view it as being somehow dangerous or something like that, detrimental somehow to the kid or to the situation.
Well, here you go. The state manual in state law regarding CPS is that, like alcohol, someone that drinks or even uses illicit drugs, it's not automatic. It's got to impact the well-being of the child. You know what I mean? And being a caregiver under the CPS would suggest that in and of itself is not dangerous. Something else. Being a patient, not in and of itself. And not even something that's in play if you're Section 4 compliant. So someone that was outside of Section 4, still not necessary that it's automatic to danger to the child. The problem is that CPS is not governed by state law. They're governed by religious law. And religious law, no matter whether it's Schedule 1, whether it's medical, whether it's legal, in these organizations that proclaim to their deeply held fundamental religious beliefs, prohibit any marijuana use. It's a controlled, it's illegal. They don't care. It's against their religion and a basis to take the children. That's something completely different, a different legal issue that is also something that is involves us in a lawsuit that we're seeking relief from the Michigan Supreme Court. But in cases that someone gets, this will be a challenge. There will be a challenge somewhere. The point I wanted to get to is, how do any of these police officers know the difference between marijuana and hemp anymore? Right?
We talked about that a few weeks ago here, because in other states they have not been, they have like legalized hemp, but not necessarily, cannabis at large, have not been doing some of the further investigations into stuff because they can't tell the difference.
They don't know the difference, and there's, they're able to test hemp now. They've got their own, purportedly the state of Michigan has been testing. I don't know if they validated whatever they're doing, but the bottom line is that the, some plants growing outside someone's field that are visible to the neighbor, which would not be allowed under the MRPMA. How are they going to be able to distinguish that? And if they come in and take them, they send it up to the lab. Well, that's not taking place. And and even if it's marijuana, they think it's marijuana, right?
So there was the now.
And Jamie,
getting off my question. If you
let me put it this way. Let's say, I think the answer really exists like this: if someone decides they're going to grow 1,000 hemp plants in their backyard, they're going to have not even try to resemble any of the requirements for MRPMA growing 12 outside, and they're just going to grow them in their backyard. Is that illegal?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And if it is illegal, the illegality, it's not illegal. If there's a problem, it's that they didn't get a license. But it's not a controlled substance. So that could take place anywhere.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There would be a potential, I don't even know, it's like a civil, I don't know, it's like you'd not be able to get a license next time. They throw some kind of administrative something. I don't even know that there's an authority that allows them to come and take it, right? I mean, so that is a reality. Like the to pretend that being next to somebody and there's 1,000 plants of cannabis sativa L, okay, and suggesting that would be a violation of MRPMA that would bring a felony. Let me tell you something. The federal government just said that is not a crime. So do you understand? It's not, so in the world we're living in, the cannabis plant has been displaced as a crime. Okay, so we don't have to go far to look for other support and authority. The federal government expects it to be grown, unlike marijuana plants. So if someone's outside of MRPMA, first of all, do we know if it's a hemp or it's cannabis sativa L? But we're going to call it marijuana because it's the test or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the delineation of the quantity of THC in these plants and what is so offensive that would get MRPMA felony versus nothing under the federal government is absurd that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
There's so much creation of this bubble of protection that needs to be recognized. Not felonized. It needs to be recognized, not felonized.
What does the implications of Attorney General saying that these places that have been operating outside of the recognized system have she inferred that they've been kind of let go for too long now, or something like that? Like we might be seeing some type of a.
Was that a recent announcement?
I'm not sure how recent it is, but
They've been saying this for a while, but so far nothing's really that I can see has happened.
And some people are getting more and more concerned, though.
Well, I think one of the things that goes along with this is that up to this point, there haven't been licenses to do the behavior that they're referring to. Mm-hmm. And while people have always had concerns about after the declaration of needing a license was one thing, if they're not available, they're not available. Once they become available and you're not trying to get one and they know that you exist and you're all over Facebook and you're proclaiming we are family, come to my event, and you have a license and it's state marijuana there that you're selling and they're trying to regulate it. I mean, I don't know that it's criminalized. It's certainly something that isn't a frame that would be. I'm
No
not
problem.
advocating this. I want to make sure.
No
I'm not,
problem doing something about it. I guess it's like, I think we all hope that it's done civilly and no paramilitary
It should only be. It
invasion,
should only
so,
be
you know.
civilly. It
But,
should only be civilly.
but do we trust that at this point until we see how they operate? Because somebody might be a defiant for a knock and talk or two, thinking that they've got some
Well, I
kind of
think it should be
argument that they
done by way of city proclamation. They send a cease and desist. They come out and shut the locks on your door. That's what you do. Then you bring an injunction and you serve it out. You bring them to court. And you get an emergency temporary injunction. And if they violate that, then it's a court order, it's contempt of court. You know what I mean? To that level, now you're messing with the court. Now the court's got a jurisdiction over you to. I mean, it shouldn't go that far, but it shouldn't be on. It's like any other business. Like if you got a, you got a. I mean,
So
what
the-
you got
the lady who was representing the AG's office today in Rory's hearing, Rory Gold was appealing his
license issue.
licensing issues, and she was in Isabella County in the prosecutor's office at the time of McQueen. And I mentioned to her how that one had the distinction of being a civil case, at least amidst a lot of the other, criminal raids and all that kind of stuff.
And she said,
She recognized. I mean,
yeah, the case came out of Isabella County.
yeah.
Judge Chamberlain. And we have a case that's still pending now, by the way, the Fisher case, The, what did she say about that? She agrees it was civil. She doesn't care. That's like,
She was nice. She was civil to me.
well, I see what
About
you're saying because
civil to me, talking about
because
the civil case.
prior, they were right, any prior activity.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a shitty kind of a ruling, but at least
No, but I'm saying
At
for
least it
purposes of
was
the
done
license,
civilly,
for
right.
purposes of the license challenge, the point would be that you were unworthy of a license because you were breaking the law before, and McQueen was the way. And your response was, well, civil, all they need to do is send a shutdown notice, and they would have been cool with it. Right? I mean, that's instead of like as lots of places got raided and paramilitary,
right, yeah.
especially those that are registered through the city and big and
Shooting fish in a barrel, man. Agros.
Tros.
The agros.
I know. I'm
Oh.
listing the ones we got. The Tros got.
Oh, okay, I'm
Got
sorry.
aggro. Local permission. We have
Yeah.
Bill and Candy Teichman.
Sure.
Brian Vaughn. Guy died. Bob and Tori got tortured in there. Tori passed away. Sal aggro.
Yeah. No doubt.
And I mean, when you think of the remember the alligator? Remember the alligator?
Somebody's pet in a like a terrarium type thing, wasn't it?
Guarding the grove.
Yeah, alligator guarding the road. It's like one of those caiman lizards or something like that, like in a 50-gallon aquarium or something.
I mean, listen, the state of all of these laws that we're talking about and the perception and the way they impact is like the frame that case. You remember they brought it all out, laid it all out in the guns, and they put it all in one particular room, and people couldn't. And they came out and said, "Oh, they had alligators." I mean, that's the framework of a Schedule 1. Nobody thinks that way anymore. Nobody voted for any of that. Even with that, they still voted for it.
That was so obvious in the Ted Visner trial that I sat in on in Bay City, and he did this without an attorney. And much respect to him and everybody who supported him, but he probably could have alleviated the situation a little bit had he
Sure.
had some kind of guidance. Just my humble opinion.
When you get convicted?
But the point is, like, he got convicted. The testimony of like the police and what happened with their sting was all like as if it were for this major like drug operation that was going on. And meanwhile, this guy is like openly running a dispensary out of his garage, basically. And the contradiction of like how they were treating him and his behavior, I just kind of thought he himself should have brought that up, a couple of times. I mean, it really showed up there. So we are at that.
I mean, Amanda
Crossroads.
Jocelyn, got an inspection. The police came out and looked at it. She was open for 9 months in a strip mall. Here I am. Police drove by there every single day. They came in and got food at the place. The idea that they didn't know that they were there means they're either like the, like comedy police.
And they do that a lot, which means these places are not like dangerous.
They're not dangerous.
A presence in the
Right,
area because they
but
let
they
them go
treat
for
them
months
like-
before they do anything with them. Sometimes.
The next to a tanning salon. If there was a problem, they would have called. So you have to use the level of, entry.
One of the ways we describe this or have over the years is when K2 was in gas stations and at head shops and, was just being sold, before there's any legislation concerning it. It was obvious that there was an issue there, and in neighborhood groups and parents and all that kind of stuff would rally against it, and they'd protest these stores, and they'd make them quit selling it, and they pushed the legislature to move and all that kind of stuff. These cannabis places have popped up in many different areas, and those same kind of responses have not taken place because ensuing issues with cannabis being in the area haven't taken place.
Well, there's some studies to the contrary, Jimmy. Just kidding.
Lately, the stuff that we've been doing as far as these town halls and city things, of course, we have to deal with that one all the time. Well, we talked about that.
Marijuana makes you violent, Jamie.
Man, we did this panel discussion the other day and put on by Chad Morrow, and it was about there's going to be a vote on opting into the MRTMA or not. And there was this is kind of what Michael's referencing. There was one of the candidates was in the audience, and she's like, some people show up with their studies, and you show up with yours, and as if like, whatever you show up with a pice of paper on, whatever it says, it's just equal kind of.
Yeah. Well, one cancels the
contribution to
other
the
one
support,
out,
yeah.
and yeah.
So I explained to her, no, some have like usable information in them, and some were designed to make them seem as though something is the case when it's really not, and you have to figure that out so you know what the best information to work with it.
Some are actually funded by the federal government, and as part of the funding, say specifically that under no circumstances could this funded report by the federal government conclude that marijuana is not dangerous.
Yeah, look for why it is a problem. That's the project, not see what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, listen, I'm not. Things should be different. The law passed. We've got a lot of changes around, and there's certainly an effort by the state, unlike ever before, right? Can you remember back in the day, 2008, 2009, 2010? Who was the person that used to run the Laura, it wasn't Laura. It was like Department of Community Health. At first, there was it's not Shelley Egerton, but it was like.
No, I know. I remember who you're talking about.
And she'd go to these different events, and she'd be like,
"Yeah, she was okay." Yeah.
Yeah, but she'd be sitting there and say, "We're understaffed. We're overworked. We don't have a copy machine, and we're 9 months behind the cards." I'd be like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
The process things. We got an application. That's not an excuse, and people are getting arrested. Now you can do it online. Now they got big budget. They got a lot of. It's just a phenomenal. It's interesting.
Well,
it's really
part of the difference of the administration too, and how they choose to.
Well, the state now has a vested interest in earnings, and they want to see it happen. And to the extent that it's, I don't know. I mean, to the extent that it doesn't. I guess it doesn't matter. There's certainly a intention and an effort, whether it's the right decision or not, to try to make it work. Right? I mean, I say that only they have people in play that are there and funded to do what? To regulate a system that's going to produce revenue, right? In some capacity, the 3 applications. And they're trying hard to do that, right? They're trying to do that. And much different then. Nobody contributed to the implementation. No one in law enforcement. Nobody in administrative. It was a battle from the get-go, right? They looked for every other place to interfere with its implementation, right? Social, public safety. No place was Lara ever, they didn't have a director that was, no, you can't, nope, caregivers can't, whatever. I mean, just there's no, now, you know what I'm saying? Like administrative rulemaking. Like they had all kinds of ways to, you see what I'm saying? Like now they're into it. Now they, got a mechanism. How is this any different that, we're coming to this era, they came up with this board, like what, they could have done all this with the MMA, if you think about it, you know what I mean?
They could have.
Now they're vested, now they want to, there's a disgust to it. You know what I mean?
Well, now they're all making money off of it.
And you know the other thing is that those that are engaged now, and to just say this is what I was talking about before. To just say we've passed legalization, it's all good, and let the chips fall where they may. No, there's so many existing things that are left over that are need to be adjusted with the legalization. Otherwise, it's not going to have an impact. That's how I look at it. Deb, what do you say? You've had it too much?
We are going to have to take a break.
It's break
But
time.
Deb's
is
got a
what
comment.
I
I hear it.
The comment was it's break time. Jim
All
is spazzing out next to me,
That's not true.
and he said it's time for a break. Catch your breath.
So, the moral of the story is people can't handle cannabis being without consequences, and it's too difficult.
Well, that's just it.
to
Yeah.
people conceive of that, and that's why we're not moving forward.
Well, and law enforcement fuels the whole shit show every time.
All right, so we're taking a break. Is that what we decided? Okay,
Yeah.
let's do some of that. All right, okay.
Komorn Law. Michael Komorn is one of the top attorneys in Michigan that has experience and dedication in criminal defense law. Komorn Law can take your case from arrest all the way from trial, appeals, and even to the Supreme Court. The team at Komorn Law has the compassion and the experience you can look to for help in your time of need. Komorn Law has over 25 years experience in criminal defense. We have accomplished numerous legislative changes through community involvement and lobbying. Our award-winning law firm has a reputation like no other for keeping overreaching government accountable and in check. We have built Komorn Law for people who need lawyers to stand up to the system, fight back and win. Once we become your lawyer, you become a part of our family. Don't settle for less, just ask our clients. Komorn Law, the best damn criminal defense lawyers, period.
It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the stir for breathing air. It ain't fair, John Sinclair, in the stir for breathing air. Set him free, let him be, breathing air like you and me. What's the judge to do? What else can Judge Columba do? We got to set him free. This whole place went nuts. If he was a soldier man, shooting gooks in Vietnam. If he was CIA, selling dope and making hay, he'd be free, breathing air like you and me. What's the judge do? What else could Judge Columba do? Well, we got to set him free. And sure enough, that was Saturday, and then next Monday, John Sinclair walked out of jail. And the Supreme Court issued an opinion in People versus John Sinclair that said, it's cruel, it's unusual, it's arbitrary, it's irrational, it's capricious, and it cannot be the law in the state of Michigan that we treat marijuana the same way we treat opioids. And they set him free. Hi, I'm Jeff Frazier. I'm one of the attorneys at Komorn Law in Michigan. And on behalf of poet John Sinclair, some doctors, some pharmacists, some organizations, we're suing the Michigan Board of Pharmacy to finally, once and for all, to remove marijuana from the Michigan list of controlled substances. John Sinclair was and is a poet provocateur, and adamant opponent and protester against America's involvement in the Vietnam War and all the bombings. He was organized together with Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin and the Black Panthers guys. And, he organized against the war, and in his words, we were protesting the war and we were advocating for the legalization of marijuana, all the while smoking vast quantities of it. We ought to do something about finally getting this plant off of the controlled substances list. We have a law where the state of Michigan is licensing the medical use of marijuana. At the same time, it says under the Board of Pharmacy says under the Controlled Substances Act that it is still a controlled substance. And not only is it still a controlled substance, it's still a Schedule I controlled substance. And being Schedule I controlled substance means that it is contraband per se, and that its mere presence is evidence of a crime, and it justifies the raids. Michigan State Police spend 40% of their resources going after marijuana that is allowed for medical use, is licensed by the state, is now been voted into law by the people of this state to be legal for adult use. And yet it's still 40% of the police budget, still 40% of the prosecutor's daily load, it's still 40% of the Michigan State Police Crime Lab daily load. And it's still Schedule I, which justifies the stops, the searches, the seizures, and more importantly, the raids. And that means men with AR-15s and ski masks going in where men, women, and children and dogs and grandparents, are quietly sitting there watching TV. And because the neighbor complained of the smell of marijuana coming from a basement window, these patients or caregivers and now any citizen in the state is allowed to grow. The continued placement of marijuana on the Michigan State list of controlled substances is just simply absurd. Hopefully we'll get our hearing. If not, then we'll fight it out in the Court of Appeals and ultimately back to the Supreme Court that originally spoke in the case of John Sinclair back in 1971. It's time for, this absurdity that has forever lived at the heart of the drug war to be done with. And the way to do that is to take marijuana off the controlled substances list altogether. It's no longer to be policed. It's to be regulated. An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
What up, though? This Big Snoop Dogg when you're watching Hyped Up Live Session with my main man Tony Green. And that's right, tell him Big Snoop Dogg sent you. We looking for all that new talent in the Detroit area. Let's go, D.
Yeah, you know what time it is. All the way from the legendary Russell Industrial Center in the heart of Detroit City comes Hyped Up Live Sessions with your host, your boy T-Money Green. We've created a show to bring the very best talent from Detroit, from around the world, to you sitting on your couch. It's like a couch concert, baby, as you never experienced before. You could be the next artist to perform on a Hyped Up Live stage. I know Detroit, I know the music in Detroit, and I gotta do it. You know me, or if you don't know, check it out. From the Dramatics to George Clinton to Snoop Dogg. If I said I'm bringing you the very best, I'm bringing you the very best in entertainment. Hyped Up Live Sessions, the way we wish you would experience Detroit music. Couch concerts coming up.
Check this out, this your boy Warren G, and we're going hard right now with the Hyped Up Live Session with my homeboy T. Green, you better ask somebody. You don't know? You know, yeah, shots.
I was upper middle class, I had a yard of carpet grass. Worked backhoe 9 to 5, paid my union dues. But the chef came one day and he took it all away. Left me without anything to lose. They forfeited my car, they found some sugar in a jar. Told me it was probably suspicion of a crime. The other day I saw it being driven by the law, and them boys in back was gonna do some time. Well, forfeiture today, Lord, what a funny way to pay. Keep the peace so all our kids can go outside and play, without a cotton picking thing to lose. I got the Deep East Texas task force blues. Took my minibar and then they seized my VCR. Well, it could be misused to watch a nasty video. They took away my kitchen all the time. My wife was bitching that it wasn't nothing but oregano. They said my herbal tea might cause a sinful ecstasy. Told me it could only lead to doing something hard. Took my ass to jail, they took my wife, paid my bail, took my double wide down to the county yard. Forfeiture today, Lord, what a funny way to pay. To keep the peace so all our kids can go outside and play, without a cotton picking thing to lose. I got the Oakland County Task Force blues. Without a cotton picking thing loose, I got them Oakland County Task Force blues.
Yeah! It's time for Planet Green.
We have launched.
We've completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan, and nationally, and internationally, and even in Spaceland. Please welcome Tim Beck.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Really glad to be on the show.
Thanks for staying with us. Planet Green Trees, episode number 395. Is that right?
Correct.
Calling it Working Man. For those that are on the end, know what that means. There's an argument that we evolved from the cannabis plant. Let's just be honest, okay?
Ow, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing?
420th episode. Please welcome Steve Miller.
Steve Miller. Ow. Thank you for the kind words, Michael.
And we're here now still with Q, who, as I was trying to lay some kind of foundation before all the objections came, as it happens sometimes. What kind of agenda here I see? I usually resist agendas, and I will tell you that I'm not really going to follow this. I mean,
This is a celebratory of the 420th show. Anything goes.
Please welcome my dear friend, looking like very Dylan-esque tonight, maybe more Laszlo Dylan-esque, if there's a thing. Jeff Frazier.
President's have had more people at their arraignment than I have. That's really funny.
If you're a connoisseur, you're going to want the good stuff. And if you want the good stuff, you're going to go for the mom and pop stuff because that's the good stuff.
We got Jamie Lowell.
Hey, don't leave the studio.
Don't leave the studio, Jamie Lowell.
It's just a real pleasure to come here and congratulate you on your 420th show, and thank you for having me on a few times over the 420.
Alrighty.
There you go.
Alrighty, we're back.
Next week, Anthony Sabatella from THC 123, I believe. He's in Chicago with the Benzinga thing this week.
Benzinga.
I'd like to swing through and talk about his various ways of participation in this emerging industry.
All right.
Excellent.
Ancillary
It'll
stuff.
be on Devil's Night, right? It's Devil's Night next week.
Where's Ken? Why isn't Ken here?
Yeah, where's Ken been?
Can't
He
explain
has to
that
do
right
that
now.
last week.
Can't explain that right now. So, what are we going to talk about, Jim? You got some ideas we're working on right here? Got a subject matter right here?
I thought we were going to talk about a traffic ticket shouldn't lead to debt or jail.
Okay, let's not
Here's how
let's
to
not
fix
wait for
the
Jamie's
system.
answer. That's okay.
No,
no
Jamie.
problem.
We
No,
already
I want to
did.
talk about, I want to talk about traffic tickets.
We
You're
did
right.
topic 4 already.
topic
well, it
4
just
for the
turns out
first hour
that
and
just
a half.
turns out that traffic tickets is exactly what I was going to say anyway. So.
There you go.
See?
And I have lots of other stuff too, just in case other things are being looked for.
Well, there's a really interesting point to be made here, which is that despite not necessarily knowing the topics that were laid out, Jamie's original question, which was topic number 4, was really a topic that blends all these. In fact, a lot of the things that I was
It's kind of genius.
touching on
That's exactly
are
correct.
in our other topics. And if I was to put a broad banner over these subject matters, it's that we are operating within a broken criminal justice system. Broken, and as we're discussing, we passed a law, and
I was thinking that today during the hearing when the state side was pressing, Rory to explain what his behavior was during these certain things, in his history. None of them were that bad. She was going down the road of trying to get him to agree that he learned something from it or something like that. I'm not sure what the deal is, but he describes not really doing anything wrong, but yet pleading to a misdemeanor or something like that later on in court. She's like, well, why did you plead guilty if if you really didn't do anything? And I'm thinking everybody knows the answer to that. It was just less of a hassle. You didn't have to go $10,000 for a jury trial. You just got out of it, for a few $100 and a misdemeanor and moved on with your life. And that's how they get you.
Every time.
It's true. And it's not easy to fight the cases. You got to come back, and people are not equipped for that kind of daily jog. But the overarching theme of the system being broken is resounding. And it's an interesting. Last couple of weeks, I've got some of these editorials. This one is on traffic tickets lead to debt, and they shouldn't. And there was another one that, that we've got the legislature introducing bills about reform for bail reform is a big topic. So criminal justice reform is cycled into one of the forefronts of politics and policymaking. Jim, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Forfeiture was on the agenda.
Yeah.
I know our state legislature has been touching on
Expungement.
Expungements. Nothing happened yet.
Not yet. But
Not enough. Whatever. But there's we said forfeiture. There's also the lab. There was some bills introduced by Jeff Irwin. Oh no, Lucido, supported by Irwin, to the Judiciary Committee, where they're talking about having some like a commission of oversight to the Michigan State Police Forensic Science Lab #Crime Factory. And they showed up and testified and said they didn't need any oversight, of course, but another area which certainly needs a looking at. And as the Mackinac Center, this other topic, which is submersed in here about the bail, this is the other topic of two. These are all topics that deal with criminal justice reform. Let's start with this: traffic ticket shouldn't lead to debt or jail. Maybe other people can appreciate this version of it. This was an editorial that stood out to me because I've been here. I've been in this system which is described here. I'm an attorney at the Detroit Justice Center. I represent low-income drivers in municipal traffic courts. Every day I witness a system where, if you are poor, minor traffic tickets can easily and quickly spiral into a cycle of ever-increasing debt, jail, and destitution. The human cost of this system cannot be underestimated, okay? Now, the human cost is the cost to run the city. You know what I mean? Like, these two things are intertwined. This is a source of revenue. In this system, a woman's cervical cancer can lead to jail time because she could not work while undergoing treatment, could not afford to pay a speeding ticket while unemployed, and her license suspended for an unpaid ticket. Continued to drive to her doctor because she did not have access to reliable public transportation, and was eventually arrested on a warrant for the unpaid ticket and driving on a suspended license, which then spins you into this inescapable pattern of suspension after suspension, and every new moving offense is another year and another year. In this system, someone can get beaten up, call the police to report this assault, and instead of getting help, end up getting arrested and held in jail for weeks because there were warrants out for his arrest for unpaid traffic tickets. Tickets he could not afford to post bond on those warrants. In this system, a judge, even after being successfully sued by the ACLU 3 times for sending poor drivers to jail in violation of the Constitution, can still send a disabled single father of 2 minor children living on only Social Security to jail for 60 days for driving on a suspended license. So this is, I was complaining about felonies and felonizing marijuana. There's all this other stuff which arguably is, no one would argue is less of a concern public safety-wise, right? Suspending someone's license because they didn't pay a court cost. Is anyone out voting for that? Is anyone out saying we should do more of that? I know that, for example, the state of Michigan created this additional fee that they came up with, driver responsibility fee.
Yeah, that was a great
And in
time.
addition to whatever you had to pay for whatever other kind of traffic violation in court, they threw some other money because the state was going to get its money.
Yep.
And people would fall behind. They'd pay off the traffic, and the state would get their money last, and they would not give your license back till you paid it. People wouldn't have it. They didn't even let you on a payment plan.
Right.
This is how it was originally. And then they started getting on a payment plan so you could at least get it back, work, drive, pay some of it back. And ultimately, and I should mention this, for as long as I can remember from a lawyer, and you'd end up with these cases, and you're trying to figure out a way to beat them. And someone would say to you every now and then, I didn't know that my license was suspended. Now, what's the answer to that? If you don't know,
then you're not committing a crime.
You right. You should know. The way you know is the Secretary of State sends you a notice. unlike any other notice of things, due process notice, the law for the Secretary of State was they only had to prove that they put it in the mail to your last known address. Okay, this doesn't exist anywhere. Like if I wanted to serve you with a complaint,
It'd be a certified frickin' letter.
I have to prove that I served you.
Right, of course.
It's not I prove that I put it in the mail, and if you didn't get it, and the argument was always, well, you have a responsibility to tell me where you live, or the Secretary of State. You've got to post this or whatever. So, anyways, this is a bit. And then in 2017, I think it was Judge Parker, the federal court, issued an injunction against the Secretary of State that they could no longer suspend people's licenses for not payment, or they could not continuously penalize people and not give them back the license because they couldn't pay. This is a privilege that they were revoking and taking away because of. Oop, am I doing that? I'm sorry. Jeez, I'm sorry. The taking away from because of financial and economic reasons. But the reality, Deb, of what we're talking about is I can't all these offenses, parking tickets, any driving offense, speeding, whatever, failure to yield. I mean, these are things they're not normally concerns, but when you go to court or you default on a ticket and the suspension of the license, it's a terrible, terrible spiral. And there's a lot of, as this person has mentioned, there's a lot of work, a lot of activity, a lot of busy stuff. So he's got some simple ways to fix this, which is to end license suspensions, make all traffic matters except DUIs civil infractions, repeal the statute that authorize or require courts to charge fees and costs, which is laughable. That's the core of this. Do you understand? Like, there's all of this. It's not public safety. This is not, this is not like like the drug task force officers kicking in doors for marijuana patients. They have a whole slew of individuals that are assigned to going out and finding people that have warrants and arresting them and bringing them to court. They have a whole slew of people that are in traffic enforcement and are funded regularly to pull people over, to write tickets, to get them to come to court, and to create this revenue. This is the world that we live in, and there's this undertone, of course, of how the cities are funding themselves. Prohibit issuing warrants for traffic matters, and end the traffic ticket jailing program that they have. I know Detroit sometimes will have like a what do you call it? Like an immunity, but they'll have like a amnesty where they'll come in and let people pay their tickets without question if they want to. But so if it's that much of, if it's that less of a public safety concern, they're going to let people do this. Do you think it's warrants arresting them? No. It's really a so. What is this? So if we're looking back at it, this is not any different.
Driving on the suspended license, though,
is what?
I mean, it depends why the license has been suspended.
And if I sat down with a prosecutor and began to explain to them, there's different reasons why people's license gets suspended.
Yeah.
You put on one end of the scale, they got 10 drunk drivings.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's one. You got because they didn't pay a traffic fine, they're irresponsible or whatever it is. That's the that's the connection.
Yeah.
It's a completely different. I did it again. Completely different, but. You've been brainwashed. I must say it. Your comment, and think
there
about this.
There are good reasons for people's licenses to be suspended or revoked.
There are?
For sure there are.
Okay.
Like when...
Crimes.
Yes.
Misdemeanors.
Mostly, yeah.
Well, how about maybe it's because of driving on marijuana. Maybe they got to possess. Listen, think about that. Yeah. Think of all the arrests for possession of marijuana. The crime of arrest for marijuana is a suspension of your driving privileges for 30 days, period. Okay? So you drive during that 30-day period. Michigan does not have public transportation. In other words, you get pulled over, your license suspended. Bam. These people that you're talking about didn't have drunk driving cases. They had OUID cases.
These aren't the people I'm talking about.
You don't know that. You don't know what the makeup of the number of... How about this? Do you know who they don't give their license back to?
Who?
If you are clean and sober from alcohol, you had a drunk driving case 2 in 7 years or 3 within 10. Now that's a felony. But if you lose your license for one of these statutory reasons, there's a method to get your license back. You got to go to a driver's license appeal division. You submit a form. You have to proclaim that you are clean
An
and sober.
You have to proclaim that you're an addict, and you have to show them you've been to rehab. I've had a friend who went through this for 11 years to try to get his license back.
Listen, it's a script.
Yeah, exactly. You have to find. He refused to do it, so he did not get that. And finally, he jumped through the hoops and did it. But
there's a way to do it. There's ways to, because they're looking for. The world is perceived by them as a certain way, and you can get your license back if you see it the same way. If you follow their path.
Claim you're an addict. If you go to rehab, if you see their counselors, if you document all this, then you get it back. Otherwise, you do not.
They love the religion of the 12 steps.
Yes, they love it. You have to be in a program.
I would have the clients testify. We work at, what's your favorite step of the 12, and why? And because it then lets them show off that they know it, and kind of personal. Listen, it's a religion. It's literally a religion.
Well,
okay?
It is religion. It's based on a higher power. That's a religion.
I agree. I will say this, not even suggesting that is the thing.
But if
for
it
everyone.
works for somebody, I'm not knocking it.
I understood.
It
works for some
go
people.
Do your thing,
but there are some very good philosophies that have been gathered amongst all. Put aside the higher power. That's for But there's some good things in there that help people live.
Yeah, mentorshiping and camaraderie and this is what
your personal inventory kind of thing,
through these things,
making amends.
That's a huge thing.
People who are
and that
guilt.
Can occupy you.
Yes,
occupy
exactly.
yourself making these amends and
carrying that
involved,
around makes you want to drink.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If you can clean your.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there's something, and I know what it is. I tell you, when I say that there's a number of things, it's that we all struggle. Everyone does. There's no question about it. And everyone's looking at what's the way to live a wise life, right? And in there are some things, but not. All right, so that's the thing. But the point I wanted to make, Jim Powers,
that's Jim Powers,
is that when you go to get your DLAD back, and you've been clean and sober from alcohol for 10 years, and you report that you are a medical marijuana patient, guess what they're not giving you back?
Your license.
Right.
You're right. They've made no arrangements whatsoever within that system to do that. So much of the, you sort of think, how many people have been clean and sober and they just smoke marijuana now?
I'm not doubting that, but you would agree that
there are
people that should have their licenses suspended or revoked.
There are definitely bad people who should have their licenses suspended or
That's
revoked.
my point.
Yes, but I'm saying to you that the number
Multiple
of people,
DUIs,
of people that present as sanctioned, revoked, or suspended, or not having a valid license are for reasons, many of which are unfair.
Understood.
Yes.
And I agree with you.
may be tied back to cannabis use in some capacity.
Yes.
And cannabis use may be the barrier that's preventing them, and that may be their solution, right? Would you rather have someone drinking and driving?
No,
or
of
smoking?
course not.
Of course.
Of course not.
Would you? And you'd be
But
more.
if someone consistently and chronically drives in a manner that puts others at risk, that isn't fair to the rest of us, and those sorts of people should absolutely have their licenses suspended or revoked.
Totally agreed.
And as we're talking about different areas of reform of things that need to be done, Jamie Lowell, and for the legislatures, and that's a good question. Like, if cannabis is in Schedule 1, is the Secretary of State and the DLAD going to, have you're not allowed, they could consider it a controlled substance and addictive like alcohol? Like, their whole program's got to be changed. You know what I mean? Like, alcohol, their whole thing is you got to admit you're an addict. As Deb's saying, or you got a problem. Like if you have 2 alcohol-related driving offenses, you got a problem. You got arrested twice.
You got a problem, and you're letting the system fix it for you. You have to prove that. You can't just come and say, I have a problem. They want you to show how you have fixed it through their channels, through their counseling, through their rehabs, through their this and their that. And, there's more money into the system.
Let me say this, Jim. It's interesting. As you may know, I last weekend I got certified as a field sobriety test. I got certified. So I went through the training. And at the end of the day, what's that? Do you guys want me to do?
Are you a DRE now?
You're a DRE,
not
right?
DRE.
Are you going to make me walk the
FST.
line later? Or?
He's got a badge.
Yeah, I'm gonna check
He's not
your.
a DRE.
He's a fist.
I check your nystagmus at maximum 45 degrees. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be super.
In any event, what we learned was that there are people that are intoxicated in driving and shouldn't be, and then there are people that have alcohol and they're driving, and they are not impaired, but they can't pass that test to save their life, right? And between
There's people who have no alcohol in their system who couldn't pass that test.
Of course.
They're not real steady on their
the
feet.
right.
Can you recite an alphabet backwards?
Listen
Because
to me,
I don't
that's
think
not
I
one of the
can.
tests. Let me say
I
this
know
to
it's
you.
not on the test, but I'm just saying there's
they
things in
ask
there.
you to do that,
Well,
but it's not one of the field sobriety tests, and they ask you to do. Here's the thing: there's, and this is a good
and there's
point.
different reasons that people would be a
Yes,
little
and
unsteady, a little,
Well, let me say it this way. The point to Jim is that all these people that would fall in this class, well, you had a drunk driving, you had 2 drunk drivers. It may have been a dude that had a .08 back-to-back weeks or something like that he could drive any day. He's not going to hurt anybody, but he just, he's 10 minutes from. I'm just saying and I'm not saying excusing it, but the way they use these sobriety tests, as you're discussing, is a method by which they can arrest you. And to make your point, who is the perfect person that does and can pass these tests? Is it a 21-year-old, woman that just did yoga who can stand on one leg, or is it for everybody? Do they make you pass these tests to get your driver's license? Of course not. Why would they expect you to do them on a cold night on the side of a road with cars driving by
and flashlights in your
flashlights
face,
and the audio, the ears and hearing and the shock of all that affects you. So that's just the beginning of it. If they they're absurd tests. No point in time should a police officer be checking your horizontal gaze nystagmus and trying to determine if you're anyways. So, but the point of all this is that, Jim, okay, the category of what we're talking about here for the licensing and how this is a matter of financially driven policing for profit goes without saying. And not to pound on it too much, but as long as we're talking about criminal justice reform and they're on our docket here, from the Mackinac Center, traditionally a center of policymakers that is referred to by our friend Schuyler Engel quite often. He likes them.
I was going to say they're a very conservative think tank.
Conservative, even libertarianish. Policymakers are considering several. So there's the recommendations for reform in criminal justice. Another area. Policymakers are considering several ideas to reform the bail process in Michigan. Broadly speaking, proposed reforms aim to tie bail decisions more closely to key risk factors, whether the defendant is a danger to the community and whether the defendant is a flight risk. These are the only 2 real factors. One such reform would convert non-binding court rules into law. The court rules say the judge making bail determination should look at several factors. These include the defendant's criminal record, record of appearance or non-appearance, and other proceedings, history of substance abuse, mental conditions, moral character, seriousness, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting because I got a call from somebody who, is seasoned. They've been through the system for a lot of marijuana cases and whatnot and found themselves in court and was arraigned by a magistrate, and they immediately issued, and today, this is a few weeks, a bond condition of no drinking and no marijuana use, even if you're a patient.
Huh.
Now, we know that this is not something they can do, or I would say just as a matter of course, if you can't get punished for the use of marijuana.
Right.
Now, the court can arguably, find you contempt, but state law protects you for that particular behavior. And a lot of judges will, they'll deal with it differently. They'll ultimately, I think they know they can't. Somebody just get away with it and you lock people up, period. And you violate the bond, they do it. But if again, why does it happen? Because some people let it go on, and, but if you support it by sometimes they want some additional doctor stuff, whatever. You get it, you give it to them, whatever. But the idea now that nothing's changed, that there's no area that recognizes someone maybe using it medically now that it's legal, and that they're automatically precluding it as a substance on bond when it's legal, not Schedule 1 anymore, is absurd, especially if the incident itself didn't have something to do with the substance that they're banning. Now, in other words, the idea that, and this is what the law says, the statute says this is from 2018, but the law says when you're setting bond, you ask questions, you find out, there's usually a report that it comes from the background. So the courts are not supposed to willy-nilly and consistently I do that in every case. I've heard judges, I remember a judge in Southfield. He became a mediator, retired. I said, Judge, there's not enough evidence here for possession with intent to deliver. You know, you got enough. It's for use, obviously. He said, no. They were in separate baggies. So in those, I bind over all the time on those, that kind of thing. So
just as a matter of policy,
separate the different types.
Right, different strength, this style, right? I
mean, well, why would you do that?
But this is the way.
It's all the same bullshit.
That's right.
It's all a widget.
It's the devil's weed.
Yeah.
So they've come up with a number.
Crime goes up 150%.
150%.
We're still talking about bond a little bit here. You know, there's some courts, Jim. I'm going to have you guess where.
Slap on your front and I'll pat
where the
your
bond
front.
system still revolves around bondsmen. Okay, I practiced law growing up mostly in Wayne County. Wayne County, when they set a bond, is usually X amount of thousands of dollars, cash as surety, or 10%, which means a mom goes up and puts the money down at the court, 10% cash, and her son gets out. And if he shows up to court, she gets it back minus 5%, 10%.
Except if he has fines, they take it first.
Not if it's in her name.
What's happened to me? I post a bond for people. And
someone has to sign off. Right, they do. I agree.
I didn't have to sign off on anything.
When they got the money in their possession, they try to hold on to it.
That's it. Yeah.
Wayne County.
Wayne County and Oakland County, both. I've had it happen in both.
There's some weird things that happen, but they're much more. I don't. Whatever. I'm not going to defend it. Trust me. You know, there was. They used to send it. I don't know. There used to be a way to do. You used to be able to go to the window and get it. And I remember the story. Some lawyer screwed it up for everybody. Just did something. But I understand. But in Macomb County, Jim Powers, of all the court systems that I practice in, like you go to Oakland County, I don't know. There are not bonds people hanging around the court. You go to the city of Warren in the afternoon, court docket.
They're having lunch with the mayor.
No, they're. You'll see the bonds trucks outside.
Yeah. Shout for fout.
And they are in and around the area.
Of course they are.
And the judges are saying, cash is surety, no 10%. Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
That means that the family can't post the money.
Yeah.
That means that they got to go to a bonds person
and
sign a contract and sign over some collateral. And the bonds person, or give cash in a certain percentage that they keep as a fee, and then they go post the bond. Now, when they give that fee, does the family get it back?
No.
So it's a cost.
It's a fee.
It's a scam.
I had a case with a kid who, I mean, it was, like day one, they gave him like a gazillion-dollar bond, 10%, whatever, and they paid to bondsman. It was like $20,000 that the mom came out of pocket to get this kid out. The next day, I went in and got him not like a 10% bond, and we wanted the money back.
Yeah.
What kind of fee can be made of $20,000 in one day?
Overnight. So how much was it? The fee?
It was like a $200,000 10% cash surety. Like cash surety. So they took,
a
10%.
That's
so. But do you understand? So in my world, I can't.
No, it's a
for
windfall.
one, and if someone's complaining about they want it back. Now the argument that they use is that I posted the bond. If they not come back, I'd be responsible for the $200,000. That's the.
It's just one more way that the system preys on poor people. I mean, that's all there is to it. And most people in these areas cannot even afford to post $20,000. If they do, they're scraping up every bit of money they have, borrowing, selling stuff. I mean, it's horrible. And then the bondsman takes a big chunk of that money, if not all of it.
Well, let me say this. You make an even more interesting and in-depth point, Jim Powers, which is the people that we're talking about for a lot of these traffic offenses, the people that we're talking about that are find themselves in the criminal justice system and don't have any money, are people that are, and I'm not
They're
making
the ones
excuses,
pleading guilty to the OWIDs.
and they're culturally disadvantaged and more prone to be criminalized because of not badness, not evil, not being born with, the gene of the defendants. It is because they are less educated, have less support community-wise, that they have social issues that challenge them, either mental health, drug abuse. You look at this across the board. You go into the CPS, the complaints of parenting, that they're using, putting aside religious beliefs, is all social issues. They're poor, they don't know better, they have young kids, they're young, And I'm not saying that the answer is to take the kids away, but it's judging things that are, and grinding in the system and churning people in a way that is not recognizing the ultimate issue. I mean, I practiced in Wayne County for a majority of my career as a lawyer, the first 15 years, and every day there's more customers. Every day it's a grind. You go 5 years, 10 years.
District Court's a huge cash register.
Not district. I'm talking Wayne County Circuit, the felony division. I mean, you come in on a Monday, they got people going out, getting everybody that's on probation in Wayne County, bringing them into the jail, lockup Monday morning, and they're arraigning all the probation violators. You know what I mean? And there'll be 30, 40 people.
Gross.
If there's like a festival or something.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's like
there's a festival. It's a
payday
for the
But
city.
the point is, you would have. I mean, there was jokes like because Wayne County is an interesting system. You got the Detroit criminal stuff that went through the criminal division, and then you had all the out county stuff that started out county in Wayne and Dearborn or whatever. But if it was bound over, it'd go down to Wayne, the felony court.
Through the cash register district court,
Right.
the circuit court.
That's right.
So when you get downtown to Frank Murphy, where they call Recorder's Court, or the criminal division of Wayne County Circuit Court, they would have the second floor and the third floor as the arraignment judges. And these guys and girls were like the wheelers and dealers. It's weird because they have so much volume of cases that when you show up, before you've even talked to anyone, there's an offer on the file. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like they would just roll them out, and and if you didn't like it, you could go, and they're just churning them out. And these judges were these judges that, if the judge had 100 cases a week on their docket, they would keep track of, I got 97 pleas. I'm a big asset to the court. I'm valuable because this is the method that developed.
I'm going to saunter off and ride the rest of this wave by phone.
That's okay. I appreciate you coming down. Thank you very much, Jamie Lowell.
Yeah.
We're disappointed to see you go,
Not
but
typical. 2 weeks in a row, leaving early. That's not typical. So
this is
chances
set a
of it ever happening
precedent.
again are probably
hey,
very low.
we take what we can get.
Yeah.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Goodbye, Jamie Lowell.
Wow. Moment of silence.
For Jamie Lowell.
We'll catch up on.
belittled, I'm sorry.
A little bit.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Look at the hurt look on
Jamie,
Michael's face.
We stopped and we let him. All right.
All right.
Yeah, you gotta call and get back on. We got a little bit of time.
Dial right now.
So what was I saying? So I remember the guy from when we did our Vice episode. Remember those days? Remember that thing? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What's the guy's name from the show for We the Kids?
I don't remember.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but I don't remember.
He told me his wife went to Stanford. She's an attorney. She was working in one of the boroughs, child custody stuff. Everyone there is just it's a cultural phenomenon. There's the complaints and whatnot are associated with it. So we've got a lot of reasons to do some reform in the bail system. Let's talk about a couple of recommendations before, and then we can close it down there. Interim bail is one of the things. They're also talking about the judges basing on what they can pay as a basis of when they would set a bond for. And finally, there should be some reporting, some disclosures of what the return rate is. Are the people getting their money value from the bond? We don't know. We don't know what the need is for it. The idea that people have to pay X amount of dollars to get out of jail is only justified if the risk of the people that are putting up the bond is warranted, right? Is everybody? Do we really need what was that guy that show they had in Hawaii? What was that
Dog
guy's-
the Bounty Hunter.
Right. Does that really happen? I never see that.
No.
I have seen every now and then a judge will be like, "You go find him and bring him back."
And do they bring him back, drag him in, rope around his neck?
Yeah.
All right, so we knocked that one good. Look at it's. I mean,
We knocked it
the
good.
reality is this: that whether I like it or not, I end up talking about the broken criminal justice system, how we are totally askew, how our local governments are broken, and they are preying on our citizens to fund their existence. Is it necessary? Do we need all this? This guy's with his traffic court stuff. He nothing's going to change. You think next year anybody's going to be better about any of this stuff? I was listening.
Maybe, but maybe not.
It just spins off, I guess. Tommy, you have to jump in. No, they're not even participating anymore. You want to play some guitar or something? Just kidding.
Well, he's all involved in the techno.
All right.
The technical
He's
stuff
online.
over here.
He's live.
Yeah.
Live.
He's making it all happen. That's
Yeah.
Should we take another break, you think?
I mean, no,
No,
it's
it's 10 to 10.
9:50. We'll,
Yeah.
we'll just take it a couple more minutes. We could talk about the woman we encountered outside.
Yeah, we had a strange encounter with a woman outside. Well, Jim has all the details.
I think Deb really scared the shit out of her.
I was doing nothing, but it was Jamie and yourself who cussed this woman out in your parking lot.
It's not air talk time. I think we should probably.
Yeah, I know.
I
That's
don't know.
why I'm amazed he brought
I
the
didn't
subject
cuss
up.
anybody out. No. Mm-mm.
All right.
That seems completely out of character for me, I would say.
So what's going on with this conference you're going to this weekend, Michael?
Yeah. What conference?
There's a marijuana law conference at the marijuana law section. Marijuana. Here's the flyer later on here somewhere.
Oh, we don't need a flyer. You can
I don't
speak
know, it's,
speak from your heart.
No, I can't. I have to be careful.
I know you can't really.
But there's there's a section of the Michigan State Bar called the Marijuana Law Section. It was founded by Bernie Jockins, who is the won the Trendsetter Award and had a lot of really, brought a good group of people together, an interesting time in the law.
And current candidate for mayor of Lapeer, right?
Current candidate, mayor of Lapeer. Please vote for Bernie if you're out there. And, it's an interesting time where with the there's a direction to take it. What are we going to be interested in? What are the issues that exist? If you can't tell, I still think there's a lot of social justice issues that need to be addressed. And hopefully the next year we'll show some. I think Matt Abel is going to be the executive director, the president or whatever. That's what I think.
The president of the world?
The
President of the world will be Matt
marijuana
Abel.
law section.
Oh, the
Yeah,
marijuana
are
law
you
section.
prepared
Well,
to be
that's
his
good.
vice president?
I like Matt.
I like Matt too. I think Matt's a level-headed
Well,
kind of
the
guy.
reason why is because you
He's
could say
personable.
that, listen, the marijuana law section should have a sunset clause that we are going to operate only so long and not be needed anymore. See what I'm saying? Like it should be something that is not. It should be the needing of lawyers together, but it is, and it still is going to be for a while. But there's no goal in sight. And as the gathering of lawyers to learn about the practice of law in this area, there's, and I'm talking, a lot of this social justice reform has been overlooked. And if there was a position to be taken on some of these issues, you would think the State Bar of Michigan's marijuana law section would do that.
You would.
I'm hoping that, and I believe, we have to already talk Matt's, we're going to look at that. I don't know if that's the right section to do that, though, because they are made up of both, all lawyers can be part of it. It's not just some of the other organizations
What
that
about
are involved.
non-lawyer magistrates? Can they be part of it?
Good question. No, because they're not members of the State Bar.
Oh.
But they can still sign a search warrant.
That's
After being presented an
insane.
affidavit that can allow the police to kick in your front door. That seems just.
Yeah.
But they can't join my organization.
Right. I was thinking about becoming a magistrate.
You are?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I heard
I
it's an
support you
8-hour
in that.
training in Lansing. I think
Yeah.
I could do it.
Yeah.
This is you and Michael can go out. He can be the DRE, and you can arraign people right on the side of the road.
Just like that.
Yeah. The
That's funny.
dynamic duo.
Instant justice.
Yep.
That is funny. This whole road thing is going to be interesting. There's a couple of topics, and whether it's the marijuana law section, I like the debate over the cannabis issue, policy making, and whatnot. And it's weird because I either hang around with people who are pretty in line with my views of it, and can, we can have a debate about it on from the perspective of if our belief is accurate and accepted, what's the perception of the general public and how are they going to react to it, right? And are we warranted in believing that they should? But in the marijuana law section, it's a diverse group of lawyers, that have all different perspectives of things, and it really would be and should be a great place to vet issues and discuss things. I don't know that's taking place, and there's sometimes some nonsense that goes on at these seminars. I recall one of them, and I saw a post on the listserv of, and I'm just gonna have to call this. I don't know his name. I won't say his name, but it's like public health issues related to cannabis and Cannabis 101. Did you see those things I was printing out here? They were here.
Yeah.
Let me just. I don't know this organization. They're. So this stuff still exists. So they're putting out a newsletter, Health Advocates PLLC, a group of lawyers, I guess. Health Advocates. It's a newsletter to educate the public about health implications of marijuana and its interactions with the law. In this issue, 1, is marijuana healthy? 2, what are the risks of using marijuana? 3, are there any benefits of using marijuana? 1, is marijuana healthy? There's a false presumption, says this organization, by the public that marijuana as a natural form is good for you. The U.S. Food and Drug... so in this group, there's a lawyer who I think is a doctor too, and
Doctor lawyer.
What?
It's a doctor lawyer. That's good.
Mental conditions,
Call him Dr. Lawyer.
schizophrenia, amotivational syndrome. That's like cannabis abuse syndrome. What do I call it? Cannabis. What do I call it? What's that diagnosis I told you about?
The cannabis.
The pharmacist that came to the event that
disruptive
we were
cognitive function Okay,
They call it
attention
psychosis.
deficit disorder. Here we go. Smoking marijuana can cause lung damage equal to and similar to that caused by smoking. Marijuana use is associated with brain, prostate, and cervical cancer.
Oh.
I mean, there's not one cited study. This is a bunch. I mean, I hope I'm going to this conference. I hope I get to see the people that are behind this, health advocates. I can't name what it is.
We had one at the event that we went to in Allen Park that Chad was hosting. There was a pharmacist, and he was claiming that we were all suffering from psychosis, marijuana psychosis. This woman jumped up from the back and she said, "I've been using cannabis for X amount of years. Do I look psychotic to you?" It was hilarious. The guy was just so out of touch. He was like something out of the 1950s.
That's fine.
Well, this was.
He was a plant.
This guy was. This individual was at this other event, and he was advocating that, this may be the guy, but he was suggesting that Jim Henson had died of marijuana use.
Unlikely.
No, because Jim Henson had lung disease of some kind, and
some kind of I don't know.
And then the theory
I
that
thought
he
it was Legionnaire or something.
He
like
smoked moldy marijuana or something, curable lung disease. This is what this guy's perpetuating. The best was this. Him or another physician were suggesting that marijuana use causes lung cancer or lung damage. And while I don't have his name, what's his, we still didn't get it yet, but the David from, I'll think of it in a second, but this physician had been funded by the federal government to study this for 30 years, asking him to come up with a study that shows what this doctor was proclaiming. He couldn't do it. But this doctor stood before this group of people saying that lung damage is associated with the use of marijuana smoking. And I said, "Where are you getting your stats from?" This doctor was funded by the federal government, couldn't put that together. He goes, "Well, I had a patient who I had the opportunity to do an autopsy on who smoked marijuana. And I looked at his lungs, and he had severe lung damage. And I said, 'Did he smoke cigarettes?' He said, 'Yes.'"
Duh.
Okay, so, and then there was the next step of pregnancy and use of marijuana, and how the number one cause of infant deaths are premature births, which are caused by marijuana. I said, "Where did you get that?" He said, "Well, all marijuana smokers smoke cigarettes, and cigarettes are associated with
low birth weight.
This is what. Oh, right. So do you understand this is not true?
No.
This is a falsity. Again, not even identifying. So these are the things. This is why I go, because I want to make sure that we have a chance to have legitimate discussion about things. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm not. I may bail when I get there. We'll see.
Are you staying overnight?
Yes, it's
Okay, so if you have a
Thursday.
nice room and you get a nice dinner and
There's
hang out
a.
and whatever.
I'm part of the council. You know, I'm
No,
part
I
of the marijuana
understand.
law section
I
council.
understand.
My third, I don't know, third, fourth year, whatever. And they're having a meeting, and then we're doing some
Well, they
activities.
hang out and do some
Yeah.
activities and
It's fun. It's a good gathering. There's a lot of really good
just
information.
do not bum rush the GA and you'll be fine. Or the AG, you'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't bum rush her and you'll be fine.
We got all kinds of great speakers that are showing up.
Well, all right. So you got plenty to occupy
Yeah.
yourself with.
There's going to be a Supreme Court justice there.
Which one?
McCormick, is it Bridget McCormick? Yeah, Bridget McCormick. And then we got a couple circuit court judges. This Judge Farah from Tennessee County Circuit Court, who I got a couple cases in front of. Our Attorney General's going to be there.
That's what I hear.
She's speaking on. It's an interesting topic. It's like. Here, here's the schedule. Just so you know, it's like, I mean, I should come up with all kinds of vast bits of information. Be able to report on it. Something like everything you need to know about MRTMA. Every lawyer needs to know this or something.
That's what she's speaking of?
Law enforcement perspective on Michigan's marijuana laws, presented by Dana M. Nessel.
Wow.
Huh.
Wow.
What? Read that title again.
That's kind of
Her
not good,
her
not
printout
cool.
is not available. Like I just have, it's just a one
No
page.
printout available, and she's basically giving a cop speech, right? She's speaking for the
Law
cops.
enforcement perspective on Michigan marijuana laws.
Oh.
Yeah.
So she's speaking for the cops.
She's speaking for the Michigan State Police.
Well, it'll be interesting because she had her panel of people,
And
some of
they-
which were from this section, which I
And they gave a recommendation.
they gave individual recommendations. I don't know if it's the recommendation that could be considered from the organization, but
I thought they gave an official recommendation.
this group did. This
Yeah.
group did. I'm not suggesting that group did not do that. The group that she'd formed did, and this is probably what it's probably what she's going to be taught. I don't know. We'll see. I have no idea. Can we shut it down now? Do we go long
Yeah,
enough?
we're good.
I'm just kidding. It was fun. Was it fun? You guys have fun? Tommy, how was it? Jim, did you have fun?
It was great.
Did the show get better or worse after Jamie left, or stayed the same? Stayed the same.
It got
It
much
stayed the same.
better.
Yeah, it got much
Yeah, it
better.
got worse.
The air in the room got a lot lighter.
No, he was.
The atmosphere. He has not called back in like he's.
That's what I
He
was
did.
just-
He's on the line.
Is he on the
Oh,
line,
good.
Jamie?
I think he, it
Oh,
got worse after he left. He was. He knows.
You're right.
he-
All the oxygen got
he
sucked
likes,
out of the room.
and
Everybody's
he likes the,
gasping for air.
He's.
I don't know why he's so silent, but
Jamie, where are you?
Yes.
There he is.
Right
Michael's
Friday,
trashing you.
Up in Alabaster, which is near Tawas, south of Tawas. Northeast Michigan Normal is having its Halloween-themed fundraiser.
Just went right into
It's raising money for a couple different community outreach projects. I forget which ones they are now, but very worthy causes. And I'll be there, and Robin Schneider will be there, and it's on one of Nick Agro's properties up there.
Isn't there going to be a surprise mystery guest?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were.
Maybe Barb Agro.
Oh no, I thought you were
I'm out.
alluding to that yesterday.
oh, I thought he was responsible for everything.
Oh, I'll be there, so will Robin
I know.
Schneider.
Okay.
I don't think it gets any better than that.
I don't think
I
so.
don't mean like that's great. I just mean I don't think it gets any better.
All right, Jamie. So you think we should call it now? We've had enough. You think?
I've had enough.
Yeah, we've had enough, Jamie. Right?
All right, it's a good show.
All
Good
right.
show.
Good
Keep it
show.
going another 25 minutes.
I'll see what we can do.
No, we're done. If
All right,
you're,
good
if you're
stuff,
done,
Jamie.
we're
Thanks
done.
again for calling in and being here. We expect you next week as well with your guests, as you promised
Yep.
for the booking.
On Devil's Night.
Devil's Night.
Everybody
All right, good
better
night,
be
everybody.
deviled out.
Thank
All right, sounds good, and we'll see you next week. And thanks for listening. Thanks, guys, for being here. Good stuff. I got to play some music. We're shutting it down.
Komorn Law, Michael Komorn is one of the top attorneys in Michigan that has experience and dedication in criminal defense law. Komorn Law can take your case from arrest all the way from trial, appeals, and even to the Supreme Court. The team at Komorn Law has the compassion and the experience you can look to for help in your time of need. Komorn Law has over 25 years experience in criminal defense. We have accomplished numerous legislative changes through community involvement and lobbying. Our award-winning law firm has a reputation like no other for keeping overreaching government accountable and in check. We have built Komorn Law for people who need lawyers to stand up to the system, fight back and win. Once we become your lawyer, you become a part of our family. Don't settle for less, just ask our clients. Komorn Law, the best damn criminal defense lawyers, period.